Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Before we begin, please make sure that you follow me on alternative media channels. You will find them linked in the video description below. Today, the Federal Reserve delivered its biggest rate cut in years. The Fed cut interest rates by 0.5 point. This is an extremely aggressive beginning to the expected series of interest rate cuts. The scale of this rate cut signals that we're not just about to see soft landing. Forget those words. It likely shows that we are already in a deep recession. What is in store for us? Likely jobs revisions and rising inflation to begin with. But first, let's quickly run through the key points that were made by the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell during his press conference following the FOMC meeting. Here's the most important, in my opinion, part of his speech. Take a look.
Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to reduce the degree of policy restraint by lowering our policy interest rate by 0.5 percentage point. This decision reflects our growing confidence that with an appropriate recalibration of our policy stance, strength in the labor market can be maintained in a context of moderate growth and inflation moving sustainably down to 2%. If the economy evolves as expected, the median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 4.4% at the end of this year and 3.4% at the end of 2025.
Does today's action constitute a catch-up in action given recent substantial revisions to the employment data?
So I would say we don't think we're behind. We do not think we think this is timely, but I think you can take this as a sign of our commitment not to get behind. We've been very patient about reducing the policy rate. We've waited. Other central banks around the world have cut, many of them several times. We've waited, and I think that patience has really paid dividends in the form of our confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. So I think that is what enables us to take this strong move today. I do not think that anyone should look at this and say, oh, this is the new pace. We're moving at the pace that we think is appropriate given developments in the economy in the base case. The economy can develop in a way that would cause us to go faster or slower. In the current situation, reserves have really been stable. They haven't come down. We're not thinking about stopping runoff because of this at all. We know that these two things can happen side by side. In a sense, they're both a form of normalization. And so for a time, you can have the balance sheet shrinking, but also be cutting rates.
So to sum it up, once again, Powell stated that inflation is moving towards that 2% target rate. He said he expects the Fed funds rate to be around 4.5% at the end of this year, which means that we will see another massive 0.5 point rate cut within the next several months, and a full percent lower the following year, around 3.5%, he said. No concerns about the labor market despite expected revisions.
So on the job creation, it depends on the inflows, right? So if you're having millions of people come into the labor force, and you're creating 100,000 jobs, you're going to see unemployment go up. So it really depends on what's the trend underlying the volatility of people coming into the country. We understand there's been quite an influx across the borders, and that has actually been one of the things that's allowed unemployment rate to rise. And the other thing is just a slower hiring rate, which is something we also.
Well, the next revision of the jobs market is expected to be quite significant, close to 90,000 jobs. The labor market is showing considerable cracks. The Fed increased their expectation of unemployment rising. Their forecast now is at 4.4% unemployment rate for this year end. The official data shows that we are at 4.2% right now. Well, just 2 months ago, the Fed forecasted a 4% unemployment rate. So we're going to see unemployment rise from now on. The labor market may be far worse than it appears at this time, which would explain the massive 0.5 point rate cut announced today.
What would constitute for you and the committee a deterioration in the labor market? You're pricing in basically by the end of next year 200 basis points of cuts just to maintain a higher unemployment rate. Would you be moving to a more preemptive monetary policy style rather than, as you did with inflation, waiting until the data gave you a signal?
No, we're going to be watching all of the data, right? So if, as I mentioned in my remarks, if the labor market were to slow unexpectedly, then we have the ability to react to that by cutting faster. We're also going to be looking at our other mandate, though. We have greater confidence now that inflation is moving down to 2%, but at the same time, our plan is that we will be at 2%, over time. So, and policy we think is still restrictive, so that should still be happening.
I'm just curious as to how sensitive you'll be to the labor market, since you forecast we are going to see higher unemployment and it is going to take a significant amount of monetary easing to just maintain it.
So, what I would say is we don't think we need to see further loosening in labor market conditions to get inflation down to 2%. But we have a dual mandate, and I think you can take this whole action as take a step back. What have we been trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve a situation where we restore price stability without the kind of painful increase in unemployment that has come sometimes with disinflation. That's what we're trying to do. And I think you can take today's action as a sign of our strong commitment to achieve that goal.
With this bold rate cut, the Fed just effectively planted the seeds for a massive wave of inflation and the next crisis that will be far more serious than any recession we've experienced before. This is by no means a coincidence, but rather a deliberate step, one of many steps. When inflation gets out of control even more, there will be a need for monetary tightening. So this may lead to higher interest rates for longer. Following the Fed's announcement, three interesting things happened. The US dollar index declined to the lowest point this year. This chart shows the value of the US currency against a basket of 6 major rivals. As you can see, it dropped 0.3% and it's now at its weakest point since July of 2023. Fed rate cuts will weaken the dollar even more going forward. Now let's look at how gold reacted. Spot gold jumped to a record high of $2,560 per ounce. The rate cut that was delivered by the Fed was good for gold today. Lower interest rates, which is the direction the Fed is moving, at least for now, until, things get really interesting, lower interest rates put downward pressure on the US dollar, which makes gold cheaper for investors who hold other currencies. The third item I would like to point out is a big red flag, something to keep an eye on. 10-year Treasury yields rose today in response to the Fed's rate cut. The long-term concern about rising inflation is definitely quite significant. This is what it's showing. The 10-year Treasury was up 6 basis points to 3.7%. The 2-year Treasury yield added more than 2 basis points to 3.6%. So we have a sinking dollar, rising gold prices, and rising Treasury yields. This is a perfect storm. Yet, the Fed Chair Jerome Powell commented that the economy is strong. We've heard that many times before. Thanks for watching. I hope that this quick video was interesting. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.